Translate this. The millionaire CEO mocked her, but the poor delivery girl left him speechless. Before we begin, let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. And once the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. If you're so smart, translate this. That's what the billionaire CEO said to a delivery girl, dripping wet, uninvited, unwelcome. He didn't know she once loved him. He didn't remember the night under the Italian stars, the girl with the notebook and the quiet eyes. But when she flipped open that Mandarin contract and saved his empire in front of his entire board, he froze. Not because of the language, but because of something deeper. Recognition, shame, and the terrifying thought, what if the woman I just mocked is the only person who ever saw me? The girl with no badge. The rain tapped against the tall glass windows of Whitmore Enterprises like a question no one dared to answer. Inside the 47th floor boardroom, everything was cold. The chrome, the silence, the eyes of the men in suits, until the elevator dinged and she walked in. Soaked sneakers, a yellow raincoat, helmet still dripping, and in her hands, a paper bag with steam still curling from the top. No one moved. Adam Whitmore didn't even look up from his contract. "It took you long enough," he said. Flipping another page, April set the bag down slowly. It was a 25-minute ride, uphill, in rain, on a bike. I made it on time. Silence. Colder than the AC. An assistant coughed. No one laughed. Finally, Adam looked up. His eyes didn't blink. "This isn't fast food. We're in the middle of a billion-dollar acquisition." April crossed her arms. "Ordering gourmet doesn't make it fall from the sky." "Sir." Someone let out a nervous chuckle. "Someone else got kicked under the table." Adam raised an eyebrow. "Do you have any idea how important this meeting is?" "Not a clue," she replied. "But I do know rich people get mean when they're hungry." Her voice was calm, not defiant, just honest. And that's when something flickered in his eyes, like recognition, or maybe just surprise. She was not what he expected. Not timid, not wide-eyed. Her hands were calloused, her shoulders wet, but her gaze sharp, steady, like someone used to being underestimated. Adam cleared his throat, annoyed by his own interest. He dropped a thick document on the table with a thud. "Let's test that confidence. If you're so smart, translate this." He smirked. The board chuckled. Everyone leaned forward, waiting for her to squirm. April blinked once, then stepped closer. "May I?" He slid the folder toward her. She opened it. "Page 1. Silence. Page 2. Tension. Page 3. She pointed. "There's a mistake here," she said. "This character? It means debt assumption, not appropriate in a legal clause." She flipped 2 more pages. "This clause, if signed, makes your company liable for a Chinese subsidiary, already $80 million in the red." The room froze. Adam leaned forward. "You can read Mandarin." April looked him in the eye. "A little better than your Italian." Gasps. Keyboards clicked. One director stood to double-check her claim. And Adam Whitmore, CEO, Wall Street's ice brain, just stared as the girl he'd mocked put the document back in his hands and said softly, "The food's still hot. Sauce is packed separately, just like you asked." Then she turned and walked out, helmet in hand, hair dripping, without looking back. And somewhere, buried under years of boardrooms and deals, something in Adam stirred, not because she corrected his Mandarin, but because she looked exactly like someone he once knew and forgot, or tried to. Chapter 1. Back of the line. The alarm rang at 5. Binch a.m. Soft. Respectful, like it didn't want to wake her, but had to. April Johnson was already half awake, staring at the ceiling in the darkness of her shared one-bedroom apartment. Another day, another delivery, another ride through a city that looked right past her. She turned it off and sat up slowly. Not because she was tired, though she was, but because she was used to moving carefully, quietly, the way people who live with sick, loved ones always do. Across the room, her mother lay bundled under an old knit blanket, the oxygen machine purring softly beside her like a tired dog. April tiptoed over, adjusting the mask on Donna's face, brushing a wisp of hair from her damp forehead. "It's okay, Mom," she whispered. "You keep breathing. I'll keep pedaling." The kitchen was the size of a walk-in closet. The faucet leaked. The window never closed properly. But in the corner, there was a stack of books, dictionaries, language manuals, marked up textbooks from used bookstores, some in Mandarin, others in French, a few in Russian and Italian. April stirred instant coffee into a chipped mug and opened her notebook. Inside, pages of hand-copied sentences. "Je suis fatiguée, 我不放弃, I don't give up." She whispered them to herself, each phrase a kind of prayer, a promise that the version of herself buried beneath the deliveries and exhaustion still existed. 7 years ago, she was a top linguistics student at Columbia, top of her class, fluent before anyone else. The scholarship had promised a future, a seat at the table, a ticket out. Then her mother collapsed on the sidewalk after a double shift. Pulmonary fibrosis, chronic, terminal, expensive. The scholarship didn't cover oxygen tanks or pain meds. It didn't stop bills from stacking on the counter, or eviction notices from slipping under the door. So April walked into the dean's office with trembling hands and said, "Withdraw me." No one understood. No one even called to ask why. From the top of the class, she disappeared. Back to the bottom. Back to the line. No one sees. By 6:45 a.m., she was on her bike, helmet on, raincoat zipped, phone mounted on the handlebar. First delivery already flashing on the screen. The city was still waking up. Subways rumbled beneath her wheels. Steam rose from manholes like silent prayers. At the first light, she pulled her scarf higher and glanced up at the buildings that scratched the sky. Whitmore Tower stood tallest, all glass and steel, cold and perfect, the kind of place she once thought she'd work in. Now, she just hoped they'd tip in cash. At 7, "There's a gun." She arrived at the building. Rain still clung to her sleeves. Her backpack was heavier than usual. She adjusted it as the security guard eyed her like she didn't belong. Elevator to the 47th. Marble floors. No welcome, just silence. She stepped into the boardroom, heart steady, and that's where he sat. Adam Whitmore, CEO, billionaire, Wall Street's most ruthless mind. She recognized him instantly. Even after all these years, he hadn't changed. Still unreadable, still polished, still speaking, like every word cost money. He didn't recognize her. Of course he didn't. Not the girl who once translated his jokes in Italy. Not the girl who once fell asleep next to him on the train. Not the girl who once loved him without saying a word. She was just the delivery girl now, and he was still at the top. But that day, he looked her in the eye and said, "If you're so smart, translate this." She stared at the contract. Mandarin, legal terms, hidden clauses. It felt like fate had handed her a map and dared her to read it aloud. What happens when the girl from the back of the line holds the blueprint to everything he thought he controlled? Chapter 2. Translate this. The contract landed on the polished table with a thud. It was thick, bound, covered in characters that meant nothing to the men in the room and everything to April. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. Adam Whitmore, who hadn't looked her in the eye until now, folded his arms and leaned back, like he was watching a school talent show, like he was waiting for her to fail. "Go ahead," he said. Let's see what the girl on the bike can do. A few smirks circled the room. One of the executives whispered, "She'll fold in 3 seconds." Another chuckled, "This should be fun." But April didn't hear them. Or maybe she did. She just didn't care. She picked up the folder like it was a language she already knew. Because it was page 1, silence. Page 2, tension. Page 3, her finger paused. "There's a mistake," she said. Here, the room went quiet. This character shouldn't be an illegal clause. It's used in marketing. Whoever translated this didn't understand context. Adam sat up straighter, somewhere in the back. Logan started typing furiously on his iPad. April flipped another page. Clause 14. 3. 2. This line means you assume liabilities of Party B's Chinese subsidiary without consent. Excuse me? One of the board members turned pale. She looked up at Adam. If you sign this, Whitmore Enterprises is on the hook for $84 million in red ink, buried under 3 layers of technical misdirection. In Mandarin, no one moved. For a second, all April could hear was the sound of the rain tapping against the windows, like applause from a world that wasn't ready to see her win. Adam didn't speak. He stared at her like she'd torn open the sky, like he wasn't sure if she was real. She closed the folder calmly, slid it across the table, and stepped back. "The food's still hot," she added, "and the sauce is packed separately, just like you asked." Then she turned and walked out, helmet in hand, head high, like she hadn't just stopped a billion-dollar mistake, with nothing but her brain and a spine made of steel. Adam didn't say a word for a long time. Finally, one of the executives muttered under his breath, "If she's right, she just saved us." Adam nodded slowly, still stunned. "Find out everything about her," he whispered. Crown Heights, that night. April pedaled through the drizzle, her scarf tucked tight around her neck, the air sharp against her cheeks. She didn't feel victorious. She didn't feel anything at all. Not yet. Flashback. 7 years ago. A language program in Florence. Warm nights. Soft laughter. April 19th. Shy, brilliant, and invisible. Adam already speaking in deadlines. Even then, they were paired for translation drills. She corrected his Mandarin. He made her laugh once. Only once. She never told him she had a crush. She never thought he'd remember her. Apparently, she was right. She stopped at a red light. Dripping rainwater behind her. Towers of glass lit up like stars that belonged to someone else. Above her, clouds swallowed the moon. "He didn't remember me," she whispered. "But I remembered him." She didn't regret what she said. She didn't regret showing them. But a strange ache rose in her chest. A loneliness that came not from being overlooked, but from realizing that even after all she'd survived, she was still just a girl from the back of the line. She had saved his company, and he still didn't see her. What happens when the girl you forgot becomes the only one who can save you? Chapter 3. A name he should know. Adam couldn't sleep, not because of the rain, not because of the contract she exposed, but because of her, the girl in the raincoat, with that voice, with that certainty, with that unshakable stare that looked right through him, not with defiance, but with memory, like she already knew him. He paced the quiet stillness of his penthouse, a space full of designer furniture and a silence that echoed louder than any subway. The city blinked below, and yet his world, all those polished deals, acquisitions, conference calls felt hollow. He opened the file again. April Johnson, 25, lives in Crown Heights. Former Columbia linguistics student, dropped out in 2020. No debts, no scandals, no public history since dropped out. Why? She had translated that Mandarin contract better than any expert on payroll. She caught a clause 3 attorneys missed. A girl like that doesn't just vanish, unless she had to. He leaned on the windowsill, fingers tightening around the edge of the glass. April Johnson, that name scratched at something in him. And then it came. A flicker, a train ride, a summer in Florence, the Courtyard Cafe, language camp, Italy, a notebook, always open, a girl with a quiet laugh and a sharp tongue. They'd been paired for a Mandarin translation exercise. He'd called her translation girl once a lazy joke. She corrected him with such grace, he remembered feeling embarrassed. And then he forgot her. Until now, April was back on her bike. The city was still wet. Her arms ached from hours of deliveries. Her mind wasn't in it. She kept hearing it again. If you're so smart, translate this. The arrogance in his voice, the challenge, the assumption, and then the silence. The kind that only comes when the powerful realize they were wrong. She had wanted to be invisible. For years, she'd told herself that being unseen was safer, cleaner, easier to carry. But today, she'd shattered that rule, and he still didn't remember her. Of course he didn't. She stopped at a red light, watching the reflection of headlights bounce across the puddles. The wind picked up. Her scarf flapped against her chin. She remembered Italy, the smell of espresso, the sound of church bells in the afternoon, and the boy in a linen shirt who never learned to say goodbye. She hadn't said hers either. She just watched him walk away, answering a phone call that pulled him back to New York. No promises, no exchanges, just a week that lingered in her memory like an unfinished sentence. And now, here he was, rich, powerful, untouched, and completely unaware that the girl who just saved his company once sat across from him under a Tuscan sun. Adam called Logan again, run the name through every Whitmore record, internships, study abroad, partner programs. I need to know if she ever crossed our path. Logan paused. You think you've met her before? I'm not sure, Adam murmured, but if I did, I forgot someone unforgettable. He hung up and stared at the city again. All that wealth, all that influence, and yet he couldn't stop thinking about a girl on a bike who looked at him like he used to be someone worth remembering. Across the river, April leaned her head against the subway window on the ride home. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just sat there, letting the rhythm of the train lull her into the kind of quiet that didn't ask questions. He didn't remember, but she did. Every page, every smile, every word. He never meant, but she never forgot. Because sometimes the people we forget are the very ones who carry our story the longest. Chapter 4. The Rooftop Offer. The next day dawned gray, heavy with the kind of humidity that makes the air feel personal. April had just returned from a double shift. Her backpack still smelled faintly of yakisoba and garlic naan. She kicked off her shoes, peeled off her damp raincoat, and slumped into the creaky couch beside her mother's bed. Donna was asleep, her breathing shallow but steady. April tucked the blanket around her carefully, then sat back and stared at the ceiling. She wasn't sure what hurt more, being seen for the first time or being seen by someone who forgot her entirely. Across the city, Adam stood on the rooftop of Whitmore Enterprises. The skyline stretched around him like a broken promise. Rain had stopped, but the wind clung to his sleeves. He stood alone, hands deep in his pockets, replaying every second of that boardroom moment. He had called her a delivery girl, and she dismantled a contract in 3 languages, like she was adjusting the volume on a stereo. It wasn't just intellect, it was elegance, control, fire without smoke, and he had nearly dismissed it, nearly dismissed her. That evening, just after 9 p.m., April locked her bike outside another glossy glass tower and took the elevator up to the 22nd floor. A woman with bleached blonde hair and Bluetooth headphones took the bag without looking at her. You're late. April offered a crooked smile. You're welcome. She turned to leave. already planning her next stop, when a voice caught her. "Wait, are you the girl from Whitmore?" April froze, slowly turned. "Depends what you heard." "I heard you read a Chinese contract better than a translator." "Is that even real?" April shrugged. "I also speak Italian, French, and enough Russian to get lost in Moscow." The woman blinked. "Seriously? You're just a delivery worker." April held her gaze. "I deliver food, but that's not all I carry." She stepped into the elevator, let the doors close. Outside the building, he was waiting. Dark coat, broken umbrella, shoulders damp from drizzle. April stopped in her tracks, helmet still tucked under one arm. Stalking is illegal, you know. Adam looked like someone who had no idea why he was standing there, only that he needed to. "I'm not stalking," he said. "I'm curious." She narrowed her eyes. "So now I'm a walking surprise package." "You're brilliant." She rolled her eyes. "And you shouldn't be on a bike this late, soaked and alone, with a backpack full of dinner for people who won't say thank you. And you shouldn't be standing like a lost romantic in a Netflix movie." She brushed past him. "Wait," he said. "I'm not here to pity you." "Good. Because I'm not a charity case." He took a step closer. "I'm offering a challenge." She turned slowly. "What kind of challenge?" "You'll find out. But it starts with coffee, a conversation, and maybe a rooftop." The next morning, Adam showed up at the Brooklyn Public Library, 10 minutes late. Breathless, he crooked. April was already there, sitting on the steps with a notebook and a cheap coffee. She looked up and smirked. "You survived the subway." "Barely," he said. "I flipped the Metro card 3 times before someone called me Wall Street." She laughed, that rare, warm laugh that made her shoulders loosen. "First lesson," she said. "Welcome to the real world." They sat in the back corner of the library, next to a broken outlet and a dusty window. He slid a folder toward her. "I did some reading," he said. "Your academic papers, your translation notes, your GPA, your Beijing exchange offer. You're not just brilliant, you're needed." She sipped her coffee, silent. "I want to build something," he continued. "A linguistics innovation unit, international contracts, cultural bridges." "You'd lead it?" She blinked. "This is real. As real as your rent, competitive salary, creative control, office with a view." She looked down, then at him. "And why me?" "Because you see what we miss, because you read what we skim, and because you made me realize numbers don't mean anything if you can't feel the words." She exhaled slowly. "I'll think about it." He smiled. "Fair." As they walked outside, she stopped on the sidewalk. "One condition." "What's that?" "You take the subway. Alone. Get lost. At least once." "Why?" "Because you'll never understand people like me if you never get your shoes dirty." He nodded. "Deal." That night, April pedaled home under a sky trying to clear. She passed neon signs, puddles reflecting street lamps, a world that still didn't see her. But one man had, and for the first time, he asked her not for food, but for a future. Chapter 5. The Girl with a Voice. Adam Whitmore didn't just show up to the subway. He got lost in it. He stood on the platform, holding a crumpled single-ride ticket, like it was a foreign artifact. The crowd surged around him, indifferent. Someone bumped his shoulder. Someone else swore under their breath. On his third attempt at the turnstile, a woman behind him muttered, "Flip it. Wall Street." He flipped it. It worked. 32 minutes later, he climbed the stairs to the Brooklyn Public Library, tie crooked, shoes wet, dignity slightly bruised. April was waiting on the steps, not dressed up, just herself. Faded jeans, hoodie, hair tied back with a pencil. She smiled when she saw him. "You survived?" "Barely," he said, adjusting his jacket. "A saxophone player tried to swallow me." She laughed. "Welcome to the MBA of the real world." They found a table between two dusty shelves. April plugged in her notebook with a cord that only worked if you bent it the right way. Adam sat across from her, opened a folder, and pushed it across. "I want you to read this," he said. She opened it. "Department of Applied Linguistics, Cultural Innovation Division. Lead, April Johnson." She stared at it for a long time. "You want me to run this? I want you to build it." She looked at him sharply. "Why me?" Adam didn't blink. "Because the world you come from sees what my world misses." She traced the edge of the paper. "I've never had an office. You'll have a view. I used to be invisible. Now you're vital." She shook her head, not dismissing the idea, just weighing it. Like a scale inside her had learned how to protect her soul before it said yes to anything. "I need time." "You've got it." Later that afternoon, she handed him a helmet. "What's this?" "We're doing my job now." Adam blinked. "Wait, you mean you're coming on deliveries? I don't know how to ride a bike." "Then you carry the bag." They started in Williamsburg. First stop, Pajamas Man, who grabbed the food without eye contact. "Training level 1, she said. "You smile." They ignore, you still smile. Second stop, woman who complained her soda didn't have ice. "I deliver. I don't control clouds," April said softly. Adam followed her, quiet, watching, learning. By the third stop, something shifted. An elderly woman opened the door. She had mint oil burning and prayer beads hanging by the door. Her hands trembled, but her eyes lit up when she saw April. "My little language angel," she said, smiling. April knelt down. "Mrs. Maribel, here's your chicken and rice." The woman turned to Adam. "You her boyfriend?" Adam cleared his throat. "Co-worker. Too clean for a bike. But I like your eyes. You've cried in secret." Adam said nothing. As they left, he walked beside April in silence. "She calls you her angel." April shrugged. "She says that every week, you make people feel seen." "I just deliver food." "No," Adam said, voice low. "You deliver presents." That night, Adam sat in his car for 10 full minutes before going home. He stared at the empty passenger seat, at the worn strap on the backpack, at his own reflection in the window. He had seen 100 women in boardrooms, banquets, and billion-dollar pitches. None like her, none with that kind of calm fire. Meanwhile, in a quiet apartment in Crown Heights, April pulled off her shoes, poured soup into a bowl, and sat beside her mother. Donna's oxygen hissed gently. Her eyes were tired but alert. April held her hand. "He followed me today." Donna raised a brow. "That CEO?" April nodded. "He asked me to run a department." Donna smiled faintly. "You always had a voice, even when people only heard silence." April looked down. "What if I'm not ready?" Donna squeezed her hand. "Then speak anyway. You're not just ready. You're needed. Because sometimes, the most powerful people in the room aren't the loudest. They're just the ones who never stopped listening." Chapter 6. The Contract Clause. April didn't sleep much that night. It wasn't stress. Exactly. It was something quieter. The kind of restless energy that hums just under your skin when your life is about to split open. She watched her mother breathe, listened to the city sigh outside her window, and sipped burnt instant coffee as she reread the offer from Adam. It was real. Office, team, leadership. But that wasn't what stayed in her chest. What stayed was the way he'd looked at her. Not like a project, not like a performance. Like a person, like someone worth building with. By 10:30. The next day, April sat in her new office. It was too big, the chair too soft, the windows too clean. She wore a second-hand black blazer and the bracelet her mother made from colorful beads. She had 3 pens, a notepad, and a plastic cup of vending machine coffee in front of her. She took a deep breath. She wasn't pretending. She was becoming Logan. Adam's fast-talking assistant appeared at the door like a human pop-up ad. "Miss Johnson, your first meeting is in 30 minutes. Also, The M&S Imports proposal just came in. April looked up. M&S Imports, the same group that tried to slip a predatory clause into the Beijing merger. Logan blinked. Yes, but how did you... I read the report. It was misfiled in HR. Found it last night while digging around. Logan stared at her like she'd grown wings. Wow. Okay. She smiled. Breathe. Logan, you always look like you're 2 sips from cardiac arrest. He gave a shaky laugh and disappeared. April opened the contract, simplified Mandarin. But it wasn't just Mandarin. It was a tangled web of Cantonese idioms, cross-language technicalities, and vague clauses that would make most legal translators panic. She didn't panic. She read, highlighted, cross-checked, paused once for breath, then found it. Clause 4, 2, 7. In Mandarin, it locked Whitmore Enterprises into a 5-year deal if the currency index moved more than 7%. In English, the clause was simply gone. She sat back, eyebrows raised, dirty and clever, but not clever enough. At 3 p.m., the meeting room was full. 3 executives from M&S sat confidently at the table, briefcases open, fake smiles gleaming. They brought their translator. April walked in alone, tablet in hand, hair pulled back with a pencil. Adam watched from the corner of the room, arms crossed, saying nothing. The lead negotiator began speaking in Mandarin, fast, strategic, intentional confusion. April let him finish, then looked him in the eye and said, also in Mandarin, let's begin, but let's keep it honest. That stopped them. The translator blinked. April smiled. By the way, in paragraph 4, 2, Sate, you switch the word yin yi, legal alignment, to yin yi, forced compliance. That changes everything. You know that, right? The room tensed. Also, that clause is missing from the English version. And the reference to currency index adjustments. That's not just bad ethics. That's fraud by omission. She placed her tablet down, stood still. So here's what I propose. A rewritten agreement. Clear, bilingual, transparent. Or we walk, silence. One of the men closed his briefcase, another sighed, and muttered something unkind in Cantonese, which April responded to politely. In flawless Cantonese, they stood up and left. When the door closed, the room remained silent. Adam finally stepped forward. You shut them down with 1 sentence and 2 paragraphs. April shrugged. I just read what was already there and said what no one else wanted to see. He smiled. That's not just reading, that's leadership. She turned to him. Calm, steady. There's a word for this. You know. What? Functional invisibility. We see everything from the floor while they stare at the ceiling. That night, Adam stood in his office, staring out at the skyline. He didn't feel like a CEO. He felt like a student. April hadn't just caught a trap. She had exposed a system, and she had done it with calm, fire, and truth. She wasn't his project. She wasn't his redemption. She was a force. Meanwhile, April rode the subway home in silence, the city lights flickering past her reflection. No fanfare, no applause. Just the quiet satisfaction of making a crack in a wall no one expected her to touch. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. She felt loud, even if she hadn't raised her voice. Chapter 7. Whispers in the Breakroom. The story spread faster than a press release. By the next morning, April Johnson's name was on everyone's lips, not in headlines, but in hushed tones by coffee machines and just outside elevator doors. Some called her a genius. Others said it was luck. A few, mostly the ones with titles longer than their resumes, called her a temporary headline. But April didn't care. She walked into Whitmore Enterprises like she belonged, like she always had. Worn sneakers, blazer from a thrift store, hair tied back with a pencil. Her badge still said temporary access, but her presence said something else entirely. At 8:47 a.m., she stood in the hallway, waiting for the elevator. Behind her, two junior associates whispered. She caught the currency clause in Mandarin. That's insane. I heard she used to deliver food. April turned slightly, enough for them to see she was listening. They froze, blushed. She smiled anyway. It was actually in a Mandarin Cantonese blend. And yeah, I did. Then the elevator doors opened. She stepped in. The boys didn't follow. Logan was waiting at her desk, jittering like he'd had 5 cups of espresso. Morning, Miss Johnson. You've got 3 meetings, 1 board memo to approve, and a finance guy who looks like he's going to cry if you don't review his proposal by noon. April raised an eyebrow. Why would I approve a finance proposal? Because someone high up decided you should sit in on every deal involving international terms now. She blinked. So, I do one good thing, and now I'm the mascot of ethics. Logan hesitated, then leaned closer, voice lower. You've got fans, April, but you've also got watchers. He tilted his head toward the glass boardroom. Inside, 3 senior executives sat with crossed arms. One of them, Martel, looked straight through the glass at April. Expression unreadable. They didn't expect you to last? Logan whispered. Now that you have. They're adjusting. April turned away, calm, still. But inside her, something shifted. At 11:42 a.m., she slipped into the break room for tea. The room went silent the second she stepped in. 2 women with perfect heels and identical tablets looked up from their mugs, exchanged glances, then left with polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. April stood by the counter, waiting for the kettle to boil. Behind her, someone murmured, "She's too much too fast. Just a charity case in a blazer. Let's see if she lasts the quarter." She didn't turn around. Instead, she stirred her tea slowly, then said not loudly, just clearly, "If you're going to doubt someone, at least pronounce her name right." The room went silent again. She took her cup and left. By mid-afternoon, the hallway was buzzing again. This time, not with praise, but with something sharper. Discomfort. The kind that settles in when someone who was never supposed to be up here refuses to look down. Adam stopped by her office at 3. Seriously, holding a folder. You've made quite a ripple. I wasn't trying to make one. That's why it matters, he said. She closed the contract she'd been reading. They think I'm a symbol. You're not. They think I'm a phase. You're not. She met his eyes. Then what am I? Adam hesitated. Then, you're the first person in this building who makes people rethink what power sounds like. That evening, April stopped by the library before heading home. She sat at her usual table in the back, surrounded by dusty dictionaries and forgotten encyclopedias. She opened her notebook and wrote a single sentence. The ones who whisper now will one day ask me to speak louder. She underlined it once, then closed the book. Because some revolutions don't start with fire. They start in break rooms, with a girl, holding a cup of tea, and not backing down. Chapter 8, Subway Promises. Adam Whitmore had never taken the subway alone. Not really, not since college. And even then, only once or twice, always with friends, always with a destination planned. But that morning, he stood on the downtown platform in a dark gray coat, holding a Metro card like it was a foreign currency. He checked the signs. He was already on the wrong line. When the train screeched in and the doors opened with a reluctant hiss, he hesitated just long enough for a teenager to shove past him. Move it. Bloomberg, the kid muttered. Adam stepped in. The car was full, loud, alive. Someone was beatboxing. A couple argued in Spanish. A man read a paperback novel titled How to Survive Your Own Ego. No one looked at him. For the first time in years, Adam Whitmore was invisible. And it was oddly comforting. April sat on the bench outside the Crown Heights station, sipping cheap coffee and tapping her pen against her notebook. She wasn't nervous, just curious. When he arrived, hair slightly windblown, coat wrinkled from the crowd, she looked up and grinned. "You survived." "Barely," he said, smoothing his lapel. "I stood too close to a man selling mystery meat skewers, and now I smell like adventure." She laughed, scooting over. "Welcome to the ground floor." They walked to a small cafe near the Brooklyn Library, sat by the window. No suits, no schedules, no boardroom performance. Just two people who used to live in different worlds and were now walking a new one together. "You looked like you belonged there," Adam said softly. "In the break room, in that meeting room, with the M&S guys. You didn't just speak the language. You owned it." April stirred her coffee. "It's not about owning the room. It's about not letting the room shrink you." He nodded, watching her. "You said something the other day about being invisible." She looked away. "I meant it." "Why?" She took a breath. "Because that's how the world treats people like me. The secondhand clothes, the outer borough zip code, the job titles that never get written on LinkedIn." She met his eyes. "But invisibility has a power too. It teaches you to observe, to listen before you speak, to notice what others step over." Adam sat back, quietly stunned. "And what do you do when people finally do see you?" "I test them," she said, with a half smile, "to see if they're looking for spectacle or truth." He smiled. "Did I pass?" "Almost." They left the cafe and wandered down Eastern Parkway. The trees whispered above them, the kind of breeze that carries a promise but not a guarantee. "Why are you doing this?" April asked suddenly. "Doing what?" "Coming down here, talking to me like this." Adam paused, looked up at the wide Brooklyn sky. "Because I think you're changing something in me, and I'm not sure yet if it scares me or saves me." She stopped walking, and for a moment, the city didn't exist. Just the two of them, a soft space between the worlds they came from. She tilted her head. "I don't want to be your charity or your redemption. You're not. You're a mirror. A mirror. You reflect who I wish I'd been, who I still hope to become." They stood on the subway platform together, waiting for the uptown train. April looked at the mural across the tracks, a child's painting of a skyline with words written in Sharpie underneath. "Make it anyway." "What's that?" Adam asked. "A kid from the neighborhood," she said. "He came to one of the library programs. He wanted to be a translator." People laughed. "Why?" "Because he had a stutter." Adam was quiet for a long time. "Then, did he become one?" "He's working on it," April said. "Still learning, still dreaming." She turned to him. "Sometimes, the most powerful promises aren't spoken out loud. Sometimes," he said, "they're made in subway stations, when no one's listening." The train arrived. He let her step in first, and for the first time, Adam Whitmore didn't need a driver, an agenda, or a script. He just needed this moment with her. Because sometimes, the train to your future doesn't start at the top floor. It starts underground, with someone who looks at you and really sees you. Chapter 9. The Resignation Letter. April sat in the restroom on the 47th floor, staring at herself in the mirror under the white fluorescent lights. She barely recognized the reflection. The eyes were tired, too tired, the face thinner, the mouth pulled into something that wasn't quite a smile or a frown, just an expression that said, "I'm doing my best." But today, her best didn't feel like enough. For weeks now, she'd juggled everything: board meetings, social innovation reports, press inquiries, backhanded compliments, sideways glances in executive elevators. all while caring for a mother who coughed through the night and smiled through the pain. Everyone called her a star. No one asked if she could still breathe. By 8:00 p.m., her office was empty except for the sound of the air vent and the soft click of her pen against paper. She wrote slowly, one line at a time. Dear members of the board, thank you deeply for the opportunity you've given me, but I need to remember who I am and go home. She folded the letter carefully, not shaking, not angry, just done. Later, in the quiet of her living room, April sat beside Donna, who was dozing on the couch. The oxygen machine hissed beside them. She looked down at her mother's hand, frail, familiar, still warm. I don't want to disappear inside a title, she whispered. Not when the person I love most is here, needing me. Her phone buzzed. Adam, can I see you? She replied after a long pause. Tomorrow, park bench across from the building. No suits? The next afternoon was overcast. Spring winds brushed gently through the trees. April arrived early. She sat on the old wooden bench, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the buildings across the street towers she'd once thought untouchable. Now they just felt cold. Adam showed up on time. No blazer, no tie, dark jeans, soft shirt, sneakers he clearly wasn't used to. He looked human. She didn't smile. She reached into her bag and handed him the envelope. What's this? He asked. My resignation. He didn't open it immediately. Instead, he looked at her, long and still. Why now? Because I'm tired of being a symbol, she said. I climbed the mountain on a bike, but now they want me to fly a plane. I was never trained to land. You're more qualified than anyone. That's not the point. I don't want to be admired. I want to be me. Adam nodded slowly. What if I ask you to stay? She turned her head. Then you'd be like everyone else, trying to use my usefulness to justify keeping me in a system that exhausts people like me. No, he said softly. I want you to stay if you want to build something with me. April's throat tightened. What do you mean by that? He sat beside her on the bench, shoulders barely touching. I tried to keep a distance. You were changing too much, too fast. I didn't want to interfere, but I fell in love with you. She looked away. That's not fair. I know, but it's true. And not because of what you do or what you saved, but because of how you see the world and how you made me want to see it too. April was quiet. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Uninvited. What if I told you I feel something too? She whispered. That my heart races every time you walk into a room. Then I'd say, he turned to her, let's walk together. And when you get lost, I'll help you find your way back. And if you get lost, she asked, then you'll remind me of who I'm trying to become. She didn't tear up the letter. She didn't throw it away. She just tucked it back into her bag. I'm not ready to stay forever, but maybe I'm not ready to leave either. That's enough, Adam said. That's everything. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. For now, it was enough to simply be. That night, April walked home lighter, not because anything had been fixed, but because someone finally offered her a place where she didn't have to carry the world alone. Sometimes, the bravest thing a woman can do is pause, not to quit, but to remember who she is before the world tells her who to be. Chapter 10. The Institute. The sun hadn't fully risen yet when April walked into the small garden behind Words that saved the nonprofit where it had all begun. Spring in New York carried that soft kind of hope-warm pavement, lilac blossoms, birds singing over sirens. She stood under the old elm tree, the one the kids had painted with handprints. She ran her fingers along the bark and whispered, I'm still here, not just alive, present, whole. 6 months had passed since that park bench conversation. She hadn't left Whitmore. She hadn't stayed exactly the same either. She'd done something more difficult. She'd grown with boundaries. The board meetings didn't scare her anymore. The whispers in the hallway had faded, but something deeper had changed. People no longer saw her as a surprise. They saw her as inevitable. Adam had changed, too, not in ways you could photograph, but in the way he listened, in how he paused before speaking, in the way he sat beside her in meetings not ahead, not behind, but beside. It was April's idea to start the Institute, the April Johnson Institute for Social Linguistics, not because she wanted her name on a wall. She hated the attention, but because language had always been her bridge, her rebellion, her quiet superpower. And now it would be others, too. The opening ceremony was intimate. No chandeliers, no champagne flutes, just wooden chairs, a ribbon, and a mural painted by kids from 5 boroughs. Flags from Haiti, Nigeria, Ukraine, Venezuela, Pakistan. At the center of the mural, in golden letters, languages build bridges, but love is what crosses them. Below it, founder April Johnson. Adam stood to speak first. He looked at her, not the audience. They say power is loud, he began, but the most powerful voice I've ever heard was a whisper in Mandarin from a girl holding takeout. People laughed. Some cried. April bit her lip, eyes misting. She didn't just save a contract. She saved a company from becoming soulless. And she saved me from thinking success meant coldness. He turned to her. I'm proud to step aside and let you lead this. Because you don't lead from the top. You lead from where it hurts and heals. When April stepped up to the mic, she didn't read a speech. She told a story about a girl in borrowed shoes and rain-soaked hair. A girl who once biked to survive, who spoke 4 languages and still wasn't heard. This institute exists for every voice that was told it didn't belong, for every contract that hid the truth, for every child who speaks with an accent and still dreams in clarity. She looked at the crowd, then at Adam. I was invisible once. Now, I teach others how to be seen on their own terms. Later, they stood together by the mural. She held a cup of jasmine tea. He carried the clipboard she forgot to sign. You did it, Adam said. We did it. You think it'll last. April smiled. Only if we keep it honest. He held her hand. And what about us? She raised an eyebrow. Are we negotiating again? No, he said softly. I'm not here to win. I'm here to stay. She stepped closer. Then stay. But stay human. He kissed her. Not for show, not because the crowd cheered, but because it felt like a sentence finally completed. That night, at home, April found her mother asleep with the TV on. A photo of the ribbon cutting was already framed on the wall. Next to it, a little handwritten note in Donna's handwriting. She used to carry books in a backpack. Now, she carries the future in her hands. April smiled, tucked her mom's blanket higher, and whispered, still the same girl. Mom, just finally seen. Because sometimes the biggest revolution doesn't start with noise. It starts with one woman whispering, I belong here, and never whispering again. The language of courage. The day ended the same way it began, with light, not the harsh kind that bounces off buildings, but the golden kind, soft, warm, forgiving, the kind that wraps around you like a memory you almost forgot to keep. April stood by the window in her apartment, a mug of tea in her hands, her hair loosely braided over one shoulder. Donna was humming in the next room stronger these days, breathing easier. On the table beside April sat a stack of letters, not from CEOs, not from donors, but from students, kids who spoke Urdu, Creole, Ukrainian, and silence. Thank you for showing me that my accent is not a mistake. Thank you for making words feel safe. April touched the top envelope and whispered, You're welcome, and thank you for reminding me who I am. In another part of the city, Adam was walking the long way home. No driver, no suit, just him. And a quiet thought that love doesn't fix you, but it gives you someone to walk beside while you do the fixing yourself. They met later that night, not in an office, or on a rooftop, or beside a conference table, but on a park bench, the same one. No ceremony, just two hands finding each other in the dark. April leaned into him. "I still don't know what we are," she whispered. Adam rested his head gently against hers. "Then let's find out, one honest word at a time. Because some stories aren't built from luck or timing, but from truth, from courage, from choosing to stay human when the world demands performance." And if this story moved you, just wait for the next one, because love doesn't end with a title. It begins when the masks fall away. If this story found a place in your heart, the next one goes even deeper. Subscribe, stay, and when you're ready, click into the next chapter of healing. See you there. Oh, what did you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Rate it from 0 to 10. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. And stay tuned, more powerful stories are waiting for you right here.